Has life thrown you lemons, perhaps even the whole lemon tree, roots and all? Or are you a single mom with children on the spectrum? Can't do the math or to save your life or can't figure out why? If that is you, then join us for some real stories of real women. We get to hear firsthand their backstory of the book She is an Overcomer. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
Thanks for having me on your live show. It was really my pleasure. Your production is just fantastic. Unbelievable how you guys are pulling that off. So organized with segments and transitions and all those different things. Right in line with what I'm talking about in my new book, Going Live. Live stream your podcast to reach more people. Hopefully people tune in for our conversations. Definitely worth the on-demand version, in my opinion, if I may say so myself. You guys are awesome.
I think this might be, I've been on over 24 different podcasts and radio shows in the last couple of months, and this has to be one of the most sophisticated, what the kids that I used to teach call bomb.com shows and presentations that I've ever been on. It looks fantastic.
I love your introduction. How professional. That sounds, I feel like I'm on a beautiful show here.
Folks, welcome.
Available wherever great books are sold near you.
Oh my goodness, Ross, thank you so much.
Thanks. This is one of the most fun interviews that I've ever done. So thank you, Bridgetti.
Big pleasure. Ross, take care.
Thank you.
If you've just joined us, then welcome to Books with Bridgetti. This live stream is made possible by StreamYard and BeLive Media. So a special warm welcome, whether you're watching us over on Amazon Live, on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, or also over on LinkedIn. Welcome. Please feel free to say hello because we are monitoring the comments. It is an interactive show. If life has thrown you lemons, perhaps even the whole lemon tree, roots and all, or you are a single mom with children on the spectrum, or if you find yourself unable to do math and you can't figure out why, then join us for some real stories of real women. And we're going to hear from them firsthand on the show today. We're talking about the book, She is an Overcomer. But before I invite these amazing women that you do want to meet, because they really are women you want to grab a cup of coffee with. And so if you've just joined us, grab a cup of coffee and join the conversation. But before I ask them to join us on screen, one of the things that I'm very, very passionate about is helping people level up on their online appearance. Now, the traditional way of promoting your books would be to do book signings, go to bookstores, go to schools, meet people in person. And we did that for years and years and years. And then COVID hit. But along with that, also opened up so many opportunities for authors. For example, previously when you did book signings, meeting your readers down at the library or bookstores, you were limited to just that audience, or where you could physically travel in your car conveniently. Now we're doing things online, and you can promote your books to people anywhere in the world where they can access the internet. And the books are available on Amazon. In fact, if you are joining us on Amazon, this amazing book is in the carousel. So have a look. There's a couple of books there by Linda Sunshine West. So please have a look at the carousel and support these amazing women. So what are some of the things that you can do to level up when you are trying to promote your book online? Now, if you are someone that likes to talk about your books on Instagram or TikTok, for example, you will know that you hold your phone in portrait mode upright, and that's correct because both TikTok and Instagram uses the screen real estate in portrait mode, so that's 100% correct. But if you are going live to talk about your book on any of the other platforms like Facebook, for example, or YouTube or LinkedIn, any of those other platforms, you may wonder why you get those black lines on the side of your video. And the way to get rid of those black lines is to turn your phone in landscape mode. Just go into your settings, whether it's iOS or Android, go into settings, turn off the lock mode, turn your phone into landscape mode. And now you'll see you've got a bigger screen real estate to use, and you can comfortably show your book and your face at the same time without trying to get yourself into the shot. Now, another quick tip is to also then use some form of a tripod, because it's impossible to talk about your book, hold your book in your hand, and hold your phone still. So find some kind of a tripod. You know, there's a whole bunch of tripods to choose from. Um, you can take your pick, but use something. If all else fails, if you are on the road promoting your book, what you can do is simply take your phone and tape it to a window. Yes, you heard me right. Take some press stick or something, or tape, and tape your phone to the window. And the benefit of that is that you'll have your phone at the correct 90-degree angle so people can see you, and you look your best on camera. But also that way you'll get front-facing light, because if you are lit from behind, your face will appear dark, your book will appear dark, and it's not a good view for your audience. So there's a plus to that. The other way that you can level up if you're using your phone, for example, is to get a lavalier microphone like that. Any kind of clip-on microphone also make your sound a whole lot better. So these are just a few tips that I want to share with you. But now I want to introduce our amazing ladies in the book, She is an Overcomer. Our first lady that's going to be joining us today is Brigette Gildemaster. She's an author and keynote speaker who inspires audiences to work through the aftermath of unexpected life changes. Having worked through her own life-altering experiences, she uses her knowledge to help people work through broken trust so they can rebuild their esteem and gain a more peaceful life. Post-COVID, I think there's so many of us who need a little help in that department. Teresa Dawn Johnson is an insurance professional, a freelance graphic designer, and an author. She's a recovering codependent single mom with 2 adult sons. Her oldest son has level 3 autism and requires full-time care, and her youngest son has level 1 autism and works part-time as a freelance graphic designer. And then we have Dr. Lee Holcomb, who is a neuroscientist, an author, a speaker, executive recruiter, coach, and advocate for the advancement of women in science with over a decade experience in the pharmaceutical industry. She raises awareness of ADHD in girls and women, as well as those with an under-recognized math learning disability called dyscalculia. Now, that's very interesting because I think there's a lot of people out there with that. So she helps mid-career pharma and biotech professionals transition into their job opportunity or promotion. And with that, let me welcome these amazing ladies to join me on screen. Welcome, everyone. So glad to have you join us today. Thank you, thank you, thank you for making the time to come out. And I'm so excited to talk about your brand new book, She is an Overcomer. Now, I want to start off with asking each one of you, ladies, how you met Linda Sunshine West. Dr. Lee, can I start with you? Please tell me, how did you meet Linda?
I actually met Dara Bose, who is one of the other co-author of, here's the book, She's an Overcomer. I met her at a women's conference, and we had dinner together, and she told me that she was working with Linda Sunshine West on a book that would have 31 women telling their stories of being an overcomer. And she said, I think you've got a great story. Would you consider being an author? And of course, my initial response was, I'm not sure. But over time, I realized that there is a story that I wanted to tell, and this is a great way to raise awareness of ADHD and underdiagnosed specific learning disabilities.
That's amazing. I think, your story is not dissimilar to many of the other people who accidentally became part of a whole range of anthology books by Linda, and it's just been a harrowing journey. But how did you meet Linda or Dara? How did you get into to be part of this book?
Same. I met Linda through Dara. Dara and I are part of a speaking group together, and she put out a post saying, anybody want to write a book? And I said, me! So...
Well, that's wonderful that that you raised your hand, because I think a lot of people hold back and sort of like, no, nobody wants to hear my story, but people actually do. I was surprised as well how many people want to hear your story, because you never know, even if your story touches just one person, then you've already made a difference in the world. Teresa, tell me, did you meet Dara or Linda? How did you get involved with the book She's an Overcomer?
Well, actually, I had asked another person that has written in Linda's books how to find a collaborative publisher, because I have a book in the works, Our Life with Autism, and actually a year ago this month, and she said, I have the perfect publisher for you. And then Dara and both Sherry Leopold are like within 30 minutes away from me. And so I have yet to meet Dara Bose, but we've been on like a Zoom call. And so I saw the opportunity and chatted with Dara, and I said, I'd love to.
Well, that's wonderful. I think it's all these accidental meetings. It's like, things just somehow fell into place and enabled this. And it's a great way to get published. It's a great way to get published if it's your first time, because Linda's made it so effortlessly. Tell me about what the experience was like for you getting published with Linda. And Lee, can we start with you again? If you can just tell us very briefly what it was like, how was the experience for you getting published with Linda?
I think she has great structure. So there were defined timelines for when were you supposed to turn into your rough draft? How many words should it be? And conversations ahead of time to help you work through, if you had a couple of ideas, what you wanted to focus on. So, very good support, lots of interaction between the authors as well as Linda and Dara. So it's highly recommended. And just when somebody says your story is interesting, believe them and say yes, because somebody needs to hear your story.
Absolutely, absolutely. I must be honest, that was my experience as well. And that was the part that excited me the most, was the fact that I walked away each time with more friends because of the whole sort of collaborative process to getting you to where the book is published and beyond. So, Bridget, if I can ask you next, what was that writing experience like for you, working with Dara and Linda?
Yeah, the same. Like, I feel like the amount of clarity that they brought to the story you wanted to tell too. I have started to write my own book in a more detail, and that's how I knew I wanted to be a part of this chapter too. It was like I've already started this, and so this will be a great segue into that for me. And you start to tell your story, and you rabbit trail down all these different avenues of diverting from the message you want to share. And I hopped on a call with Sally, who is in partnership with Linda, and she just brought me right back to that keyed in point, my topic, my message, brought me out of that rabbit hole and into that light. And so I think they just bring the best parts of you out, and so that you share that story concisely and clearly as well. So.
Well, great to hear how that worked out for you. Everyone's experience is is slightly different, but it's all been a heartwarming experience. Teresa, tell us about your journey with Dara and Linda.
I have always felt that Linda knew what she was doing, but when the book launch took place last Tuesday, well, you just saw it. You saw it all happening. All the messages coming in, all the information that we needed to know. Both Linda and Sally Green were right on top of it. Everything was just seamless. And you could tell that they knew what they were doing. And so if I ever wanted to recommend someone to do a collaborative book, Action Takers Publishing would be the people to do it, because I experienced it firsthand. And I feel that once you've experienced something, then you're more a better referral to what's going on, so that's cool.
Absolutely, I can't disagree with that at all. I, having been through this experience with Linda, myself, and all the other ladies, it has just been a phenomenal experience. She made it easy to be part of the book. There was nothing difficult about it. And if you got stuck, she helped you get unstuck. There's nothing like feeling somebody's got your back. Mm-hmm. And that, there was no stress involved in the actual process of getting the book published. All you had to ensure was that you had handed in your chapter. And the next thing you know, you got published. That's how easy it is with Action Takers Publishing. So kudos to Linda on what she's accomplished. I've known her for a good couple of years before she got involved in publishing. And I take my hat off to her all the time. I don't know how she does it, how she makes it such an effortless process for the authors. We're going to take a very, very quick break. And when we come back, what I'd like to do is just to chat to you about your actual story, the chapter in the book. So we'll take a very quick break. We'll be back in a minute. And welcome back, everyone. You are watching Books with Bridgetti, and we are talking about the book, She is an Overcomer, Real Stories by Real Women. So our first story is about Dr. Lee Holcomb, and she is a neuroscientist, author, speaker, and her story is chapter 17 in the book, and it's called Inside My ADHD Brain, Cycling from Toxic Overwhelm to Creative Synergy. Lee, tell us about your chapter, how it came about, and who you wrote your chapter for.
So I'll start with who I wrote my chapter for. It's for women who have finally been diagnosed with ADHD, or women who have children with ADHD diagnosis or learning disabilities. So I happen to parent a child who has ADHD, she has dyslexia, and she has dyscalculia, which is a math learning disability that many of her teachers had never heard of. And then as I got more information about the learning disabilities, I realized that I also struggled. So third grade, I cried through flashcards. I could never do the 9 times table. it took me decades to actually memorize the 9 times tables. My 6th grade teacher told me I would never learn math, but very fortunately, my mother was an advocate, and with tutors, etc., I was able to pass my classes. And I had an early interest in science, and this is very typical in girls. Around 3rd or 4th grade is when they get really excited about the way the world works and curiosity sparks. But by 15, many girls have shut down that interest and no longer are looking at STEM careers. So as a neuroscientist and educational advocate for science careers, I also want to keep people engaged in the learning process. Kids with ADHD and learning disabilities, sometimes they feel like they're stupid by the time they're in 1st grade. So it's a challenge to recognize that 50% of kids with ADHD also have another learning disability, like dyslexia or dyscalculia. Many women go decades, they may be 30 or more before they finally get an actual diagnosis. And so what happens? They feel like they're lazy, they're stupid, they can't do anything. Overwhelmed is a term that you'll hear a lot of women with ADHD say. So my chapter is kind of my story and my daughter's story, and also encouragement that if you ever have felt like, well, maybe you don't think the way other people do, or you struggled in certain areas like reading or math. People think that you're spacey because you can't ever find where you put your keys, that maybe you should spend some time looking at getting an assessment. Because once you know that there's a challenge, you can overcome that challenge. And so that's the message of my story.
Wow, thank you so much. I must be honest, when I read your bio, I was suddenly very, 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 very excited, because in my journey as a talk show host, I have learned so much about myself, interviewing guests. I never realized that I was probably on the spectrum, but as I was talking to people about, their experiences, I suddenly, it was like light bulbs went on one after the other. And I was like, now I understand this about myself. Now I understand that about myself. When I read your bio, I'm like, oh my word, is there a term for that? Because I could never do math to save my life. And no matter how much I try and try and try, my mother's got minimal education, but she is incredibly good at math. And here I am, I cannot add to save my life. I look at trigonometry and all these big words and like, I cannot wrap my mind around it, no matter how much I look at the words and the structures, and it is all gibberish to me. So when I saw that term, I went and Googled and I thought, oh my word, it makes sense.
There's a reason. I think that, again, just knowing that there's a reason. We all think differently. Everybody's brain is different. And it's up to you to learn how to work your personal brain the best you possibly can. And we do tend to push ourselves too much, not sleep well, take on too much. And we forget that as we age, especially as women, menopause has lots of challenges. But if you have ADHD and you're going through menopause, you may need to pause yourself and reevaluate how are you running your life. Start saying no to things. Make sure that you're taking care of your physical and mental and spiritual well-being.
That is so amazing. I cannot tell you, it just felt like when I read your bio and I heard about this word, it was like a veil lifted for me. So
and
thank
I
you
have
very
a lot
much.
of people say that, and I mean, especially when they see I'm a scientist, you're like, oh, you have to be really good at math. I get that all the time. Like, well, not really. I was probably a C student in a lot of my classes with math, but I passed. And I will tell people that when I was a recruiter, I never asked anybody about their GPA. It's really about the skills that you're bringing. And a lot of the divergent thinking that people that are on the spectrum or ADHD, you are very persistent. When you've learned something, you've worked super hard. So, I think people thinking is an invisible job, and we always underrate ourselves. So, I think that for me, it's just a passion to talk about. And I saw this book as an opportunity to help people learn a bit more. So as you look at how can you get your message out there, this being part of just writing one chapter, it's not that many words.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. So thank you very much for that light bulb that you provided me with. And I'm sure that a light bulb has gone on for other women watching this as well. So Bridget, you have worked through some life-altering experiences, and you now use your knowledge to help other people rebuild broken trust. And I think that shuts a lot of us, and that's one of the reasons I often say life doesn't just throw you lemons, it can sometimes throw you the whole lemon tree, roots and all. That's one of my favorite sayings. So tell us a little bit about your chapter. You wrote chapter 5 and you've named it Lonely Nights. So tell us, where that theme Lonely Nights came from and how that ties into your story, and just give us a little bit about your background and why you wanted to document this for yourself.
Yeah, so my story starts off with me being a single mom. I had to leave my first husband after I found out he had sexual desires towards my second child, my first daughter. And so being divorced, being thrown into the pool of all that was not planned. It was not planned to be a single mom. I was 4 months pregnant with my third. And so I had to learn to re-navigate that. I had to completely reframe my viewpoint of the world and my outlook, and all of it. My reality did not line up with my thought of it at all. And so, and my story just kind of goes through that a little bit, some of the things I went through. And one of the hardest things for me being divorced and lonely was those nights when you're sitting all alone and you have no company, even bad company is company, and, so I felt like a lot of women would be able to relate to that situation and feel that emptiness and the rabbit trails you go down, the thought processes you go down, the thinking, the things you tell yourself about yourself that aren't true. So that's where the title of it kind of comes from. I won't give it all away, but and then my message comes out with, the things I've overcome, the things I don't tell myself anymore, the feeling of value that I had because I had people telling me I didn't even have a right to leave my husband, even though he was a pedophile. And so I had to overcome a lot of self-worth for that, to know that I needed to leave not only for my daughters, but for myself, because after leaving him, I learned about narcissism. I learned about toxic relationships. I learned about gaslighting. I learned about all the things and realized I should have left a long time ago. Like I never should have even been with him, And so it really is a passion of mine to let every woman know how valuable they are, how much they're worth standing up for, and how to find that value in themselves so that you can trust yourself, that you can trust your own intuition. You can, learn to trust other people again, because if you've had an experience like that happen to you where your trust has been completely broken on all levels, where you thought you were living in one situation and within a matter of minutes is a situation you never could have imagined was actually going on, you go down the rabbit hole of not trusting anyone. Literally everyone is all of a sudden questionable. And so reframing that mindset, reframing that outward look, worldview, and learning to trust yourself.
I can well imagine how easy it must have been to go down a rabbit hole when your entire life got turned upside down. How long did it take for you to get to the point where you could trust your judgment again? Because not only do you mistrust everyone else around you, you also mistrust yourself. You doubt yourself. You second guess yourself. How long did it take for you to trust yourself again?
For me, it took several years. It took even other life experiences happening. You learn to like test things. Like, well, let's try this and see if this works, and that doesn't work. You put yourself in positions you probably shouldn't because you are learning to trust yourself. And a lot of that came from me just not having the right tools, me not having the right support system, me not having these other people who could come in and be like, I've been there. This is the steps you need to take. This is the way to reframe your brain. Even though I had learned about narcissism, it was very much trial and error for me in a lot of ways. Toxicity, I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. I knew what I didn't want, but I didn't know what I was looking for either. And so, it took me several years to learn to trust myself again and to be like, this, I do know this, and so I think everybody's journey can be different depending on the support system you have.
That's very powerful. Thank you for sharing that, because it does give someone out there who's watching this now a ray of hope. Because there's always somebody that is at the beginning of the journey where you were a couple of years ago, and so they can learn a little bit from what you've been able to accomplish. And there's always a chance that you can help someone fast track their recovery by being vulnerable and sharing your story. But we'll get to that in a bit. So Teresa is an insurance professional, a freelance graphic designer, and an author, but she's also a recovering codependent single mom with 2 adult sons who are on the spectrum. Teresa, tell us a little bit about your chapter 31, Time to Let Go, and who you wanted to write that chapter for.
Also, I don't know if the bio was incorrect, but I'm not a freelance graphic designer. That was my son, a freelance writer. But
Thanks
that's okay.
for fixing that.
So my chapter was just to retell the story of what it was to trust God, come to that moment where you're trying so hard to make your marriage work. And I believe my ex-husband was trying his best, but when you're dealing with alcoholism, drug addiction, bipolar, it's a mental illness, and he did not ask for any of that, and it was just too much for me to handle. And I was trying to raise my oldest son with autism and his younger brother. And about that time, it was 15 years ago. And so I just came to the point, I just came to my lowest point, please, God, just give me an answer. I keep trying to do this and it's not working out. What should we do? And you just be still and know God. So he just told me, it's time. It's done. I'm going to take care of you. I guess that was my biggest fear. I knew what it was like to be married and miserable, but I didn't know what it was going to like to be divorced. 14 years later, we're fine. And I guess it's that unknowing, that there's this fear that you have to replace with faith. And there was so many times that it's not even in my chapter that God shown himself that, I was without work and I found a job within 2 weeks. And, it was not just me taking care of me. It was my family, my friends, my church friends. I've been going to codependent recovery meetings for 23 years. That started even before I got divorced. And so I'm very grateful that his group told me to go to mine, because for my recovery, I really think that I'll always keep going until I'm gone from this earth. It's just my way of life, having healthy boundaries, learning how to detach with love, self-care, all those things that I wasn't taught growing up.
Yeah, it's a matter of learning the tools. And I think that's often where we come unstuck. It's often not that we have the problem, but that we don't have the tools to help ourselves recover from that speed bump in the road. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I'd like to know from each one of you ladies what it felt like letting go of your story, because I think that's usually a huge one. We feel an immense most people feel an immense sense of shame about their story. We always want to hold it close to our chest. We don't want to share it with the rest of the world. But once we have, it's very liberating. So I want to know what that felt like for each one of you. We'll take a quick break. Welcome back, everyone. You're watching Books with Bridgetti, and we are talking to the authors in the book She's an Overcomer. Each of these ladies are the kind of women you want to sit down and have a cup of coffee and hear more about their story. And so they've penned it down in the book She is an Overcomer. And I want to just give a shout out to Annalise, who's left us a message to say that it's very interesting to listen to these stories. And yes, indeed, it absolutely is. Thanks for joining us, Annalise. So when you finished your chapter and you had to let it go into the universe, what did that feel like for you, Lee? I'll start with you.
It was a little bit challenging. You start writing and then you second guess yourself. Is this the story I should tell? But I think the plus of having a short turnaround is that you have to just let it go. I think most women have a challenge of struggling with imposter syndrome, especially if you are in a professional role. In science, it's very male dominated, so it's a challenge to show up saying I'm an expert, and then you are now saying, yeah, I've done all this hard work in education, and I also have potentially a learning disability and ADHD. And what I want to do is encourage people that you can craft a career that fits your strengths rather than focusing on all the things you can't do. And most people focus on well, I can't do that because I'm not super good in this or that. So just for me, it was opportunity to encourage other women. And that's really what I think allowed me to release that chapter.
And I think indeed you have. I mean, you've just totally dispelled the myth that you have to be super good at math in order to do what you do. Because I think, I mean, that was always my line of thinking as well, is that, you have to be super good at math. And you've just dispelled that myth. So I think it's inspirational for other people who may have wanted to go into STEM, but they have this one component that they just cannot master, and they think, well, I'm going to give up because I'm not a math buff. So I think that is truly, truly inspirational for a lot of people and empowering for a lot of people out there. So thank you for sharing that. Bridget, what was it like for you?
Say one more thing. The day this book came out, I was at a life science women's conference the day the She's an Overcomer book came out. And there was a group of young women from a high school. And when I told them that, there are levels, associate, bachelor's, master's, you don't have to have a PhD. And, you can use calculators, you can use Excel, you can get tutors. One of the girls actually started crying. She says, I believe now that I can have a career in science. And if that's the only message that comes across, is that you can do it if you're interested in science. And we need a lot of people to work in the STEM workforce. So be encouraged.
Absolutely. Can I ask you to just hold up that book again, because it really just gets the message across. Beautiful. She's an Overcomer. And on the back, are all the names of the authors that are in this anthology book. It's such a great way, if you're watching this now and you've been hesitant about getting published, getting into an anthology book is a fantastic foot in the door. And just being able to say to somebody, I'm an author, it does kind of give you some kind of level of authority. It's a business card. It's a conversation starter to be able to say to somebody, I'm a published author. So thank you so much for sharing that. Very, very inspirational. Bridget, how do you feel when you had to hand in your chapter and say, I'm now sending this into the universe? What did that moment feel like for you?
It was scary because writing things down makes them real. When you type things out, that's where a lot of my healing has come from, is writing out my story, writing out little stories that you didn't think made that big of an impact on you, but for some reason you've always remembered them. And so to take the time to actually sit and write those down and feel with those is huge. And so then to share them and know other people are going to be reading them and judging them, and I can't write without putting my opinions in there and my beliefs in there. And so, thinking, oh my gosh, this is what I believe now. What am I going to believe in 5 years? But just knowing, like, this is what I believe now, and it's not perfect, and I have the right to change what I think and believe and my views of the world all over again. And having that open-mindedness was really helpful. And like Leah said, like, I just know, coming from my aspect, where divorce is so looked down upon in both secular and Christian circles, and women stay in these abusive relationships, both emotionally abusive, spiritually abusive, and even physically abusive, that my message needed to go out, that you can leave, that you have every reason to leave, that there is hope on that other side, that you can use so many tools to get you to where you're happier, to where you're in a position of living a more God-glorifying life than being oppressed in that situation.
Thanks very much for sharing that. I think every single author I've asked so far, and even authors who are accomplished authors, still feel that way when they're sharing a piece of themselves. That imposter syndrome is very, very real and alive, and it'll come almost every single time. The only person I think that unequivocally says she doesn't feel that way is Linda, but she actually wrote the book, and the book is also in the carousel, The Year of Fears, where she faced a fear every single day for an entire year. And she became fearless. She just faced each of her fears head on every single day. What an accomplishment. I don't know if I'm ready to do that just yet. Maybe one day. Teresa, what did it feel like for you when you had to hit that send button to Linda to get your story published? Tell us about that moment for you. What were your emotions?
I had some fear. I mean, only my close family knows what I went through. But people I work with, other people, I'm like, I don't know. And then I had to be extra careful when it comes to my kids' father, because I wanted to be respectful towards him. I mean, it was not a good situation for him either. We were both very unhappy. And I don't want to say that I'm sharing his story. When I shared that, I kept his name out of it. I kept my kids' name out of it. I just wanted to share my perspective in the way to trust God with things that you're uncomfortable trusting. It's hard to have that faith. And so I also want to tell other people that are, if you are now where I have been, I empathize with you. I know what it's like. It is hard, and I still go to my recovery meetings, and I still get to see those newcomers. And I, at the end of every meeting, I cannot wait to just, you know, get to talk to them. And it's what it is to not be alone, to not feel alone, to feel like there's someone else out there that understands what you're going through, is what I wanted to share.
The reason why I wanted to ask that question is that when we're going through life and stuff happens to us, we feel ashamed, we feel alone, we feel like there's nobody out in the world that could possibly relate to or understand how we feel. And that is simply not true. And when we show our ourselves, people will be amazed at the reception we get. My own example, when I first looked into the possibility of becoming a talk show host and learning the technology, it seemed like an insurmountable project. Like I could never do this. And though I looked at it from all different angles, I got as much education as I can. I was truly afraid to put myself out in the public domain. It was incredibly scary to do that because I had all these fears and I had no idea how people would receive that. But the support that I received from people that know me was absolutely incredible. It was phenomenal. I cannot thank them enough. It was such a relief to receive that support. So now let me go back. Now that your story is out, you've launched, you can now say that you're an Amazon Live best-selling author. So having gone from those mixed feelings, what does it feel like now? Because there's people out there who've got stories and they're in the position that you were 2 weeks ago, feeling afraid to put your story out into the world. And here you are, you can now go to people and say, I'm an Amazon Live best-selling author. How has people in your circle received the fact that you are now in this book? Lee, I'll start with you again.
I had one of my friends at church yesterday come up and give me a big hug. And she says, I am so proud of you. I'm like, wow. I mean, that just really touched my heart. It's like I shared my story with a few people, but, to realize that other people saw this as being important or brave and needed is just amazing. And then to be able to say I'm a best-selling author, since I am a career coach and I do public speaking, it's a great way for people very easily to get to know me.
Absolutely. Totally resonate with what you're saying. Bridget, what does it feel like to you to be able to now say to people, I'm an Amazon Live best-selling author?
It feels amazing, like a dream come true in a lot of ways. I do not have the physical copies yet in my hands. They're shipping. And so that's the moment I'm actually truly waiting for, because it's still very surreal. Like my name is out there, it's on things, but to see it in my hands and in print is what I'm really excited for. So I have had that experience too. I ran into some friends at Walmart and they were like, oh, congratulations. And I just had a baby a few months ago. And so I was like, oh yeah, the baby, and then all of a sudden they said something about Amazon. I was like, what? Oh yeah, I wrote a book. And so it's also very exciting. So yeah.
Congratulations. I think, nothing touches that moment of realization when you can actually say to somebody, hey, I've got a book. It's out on Amazon. Teresa, what was that moment like for you when you were able to say to somebody, and, from going from your fears, and I hear what you say, it was something I was conflicted about as well, is, you want to write and it is your story, you want to write what happened to you from your perspective, but you don't want to throw the people in your life under the bus that are still alive. You want to be respectful of them. And the fact that you were able to do that shows that it is possible. So again, that's inspirational for people out there holding back for that particular reason. Now that it's out there, how do you feel about being an Amazon Live best-selling author? And how have people received your story?
I haven't seen anybody in person. I have been home with my son. We have been not feeling well, but I've been getting a lot of social media feedback, like congratulations, congratulations, congratulations. And then I'd had my former divorce attorney. She's like, I want to buy a book. I'm like, really? So I told her, I said, you're not in my chapter, but you were very important to me back then, as I messaged her. And so I think what really hit me is when the graphics started coming in. They put all of our headshots in there with Amazon bestseller, and that's when it hit me. It's like, oh, this is really happening. Because I had published in, I freelanced for the Springfield Business Journal, and I started out my career in journalism, and it's so much different. Like, people can throw away newspaper articles and magazine articles, but they're usually going to put that book up on the shelf. And so it just means just a little bit more to me. And so, yeah, it got real when I saw my headshot with that Amazon bestseller. It really did get real for me.
Oh my goodness. Wow. It's just such a heartwarming experience to be able to say, I've got a book and you can go and grab a copy of the book on Amazon. And so I hope that when you get your physical copies, Lee, can you hold up the book again for us, please? I know that, just that moment when you get the book in your hand is just a wow moment, right?
Absolutely. I saw it on the doorstep. I'm like, hey, it came. So now I'm reading everybody else's stories.
And the fantastic thing about these series of books, and this particular one as well, is that this is not fiction. This is not a novel. This was somebody's real life. And if they could overcome what they overcame, I can get through whatever it is I'm going through as well. And I think that's kind of the take home message for people, is that I've got your back. Someone else completely understands what it is that I'm going through, and the title is just. I mean, if I think of each one of your individual stories, "She is an Overcomer" is just such an apt title for your stories. Your experience, has that inspired you to want to write again? Lee, I'll start with you again.
Yes, I think that I would totally be open to being in another anthology.
And the nice thing about it is that you've got the word limit. I don't know what your limit was, but it's usually between 1,500 and 2,000 words. It's totally doable. You can actually write that in a day. You can, if you put your mind to it. You may have different iterations, but your actual draft, you can actually knock that out in a day if you just set up the time. Bridget, if I can ask you next.
Yeah, I just want to add to what you were saying too, with our promotion and stuff too. We also did it all via paperback. So we didn't have the Kindle version available. So like Teresa was saying, all reaching that national or international best-selling author, those were all via paperback. So those are actually all going into people's hands, on the coffee tables, on the bookshelves. I know someone was saying they were purchasing them for a women's shelter, that kind of thing too. So I think that's really cool. Like, the message is just spreading that much further than just, somebody going and buying the 99-cent Kindle version. These are actual paperbacks that got out there into the world. I just think that's really special.
It is very special, and will be for a long time. Even if you write lots of books after, if this was your first book, it'll always hold a special kind of a memory for you. Teresa, I think you did mention something about you are writing another book. Did I get that wrong?
Our Life with Autism, Stories from the Inside. It was something that I imagined 2 years ago, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, it's a year later and I've not even, I got to take some sort of action. And so I called up Sherry Leopold, who is in connection with Linda Sunshine West. And whenever I want to know something or somebody, or it's like, Sherry knows who to put me in connection with. And she did. And so I'm got my sheet out, and I'm reaching out to individual authors. I'm looking for parents, caregivers, and individuals with autism just to tell their story. And the writing prompts are different, than this for this book. But also, too, when I started that idea, the writing of a whole entire book is huge to me. And so I know that's going to happen at some point, because from the moment I was a child on up, I felt like I wanted to share my story. And it can be a very scary thing, because you don't want to alienate your family and friends. But at the same time, I think I might change names. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it'll happen.
We'll see how that goes. Ladies, thank you so much. It was awesome getting to know the backstory of each one of you individually. So thank you very much for being willing to come onto the show and share a little bit of your story on She is an Overcomer. So I'm just going to ask for a final comment from each one of you. So if you could say something to someone out there so that they would grab a copy and go and read your story, what would you like? What is that you'd like to say to your readers? Lee, I'll start with you.
So I'm actually going to just read the dedication in the book, which says it's dedicated to the women who feel broken and alone. We see you, we understand that feeling, and you are not alone. And then the afterward says, may today be the day that you are inspired to choose to create the life you deserve, be courageous enough to act, and surround yourself with inspirational, motivational people who want to see you win. So that is from Dara and Linda Sunshine West, their dedication and their hopes for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's very inspirational. Thanks for reading the forward and the afterward. Bridget, what would you want to say to your readers out there?
I mean that describes it perfectly. But yeah, just I've been where you've been, and there's a whole another life that you can't even imagine on the other side of it, and it's absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much. And Teresa, a final word from you. What would you like to say to your readers out there?
Again, just what Lee read from the forward and the afterward. Also, too, I think that everybody wants hope. And I hope that these stories give that to the reader.
I believe they do. I believe they absolutely do, because, it's stories of real life adversity and how you overcame it and turned it on its heels and carved out the next chapter of your lives. You're showing people how to move forward, because a lot of people end up feeling stuck in their circumstances and they just don't know how to take the next step. But you ladies have taken that next step and grown from the experience. And so again, thank you very much for sharing your stories. Thank you for being on the show. And if you are watching us over on Amazon Live or on any of the other platforms that we are live, go and grab a copy of She's the Overcomer. Lee, can I ask you to just one more time hold up that book, She's the Overcomer? Go and grab a copy of that book. It's available on Amazon. She is an overcomer, real woman and their real life stories. You're watching Books with Bridgetti, and thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Books with Bridgetti. Take care, everyone, and ladies, thank you again for joining us on today's episode of Books with Bridgetti. Bye for now, everyone. Take care.